Welcome back, you filthy exiles, and yeah, we got patch notes, so let's get into them. So obviously, we've got the content update here. We go down. It's actually a pretty good summary of everything that's been added. Now, like a precursory sort of opinion I have on the patch notes for point 4 is it's a little lacking, and mainly in like the like we get two ascendancies. We get the druid, right? We get new supports, new skills, which are going to be good. The actual like end game, I think the Fate of the Val is a pretty good like end game setup, by the way. So basically, the Fate of the Val, which it's just incursion combined with Synthesis League from Path of Exile 1. For anyone who knows what that is, you'll know. If you don't, it's what the Fate of the Val looks like. It will actually be a pretty like longer sort of league mechanic that you would play through, so it's actually pretty good for that. With Abyss going core as well, that means a lot of the Abyss stuff will actually be a lot more expensive, which is not a bad thing from a market standpoint, just a bad thing when trying to gear up. Things like so far that I've seen, constricting or constricted command is still in the game. They just limited that. There's like one blip change to armor, but there's a lot of changes to like lightning arrow potency and stuff like that. There's a lot of nerfs in this patch that I've seen. There's a lot of decent buffs, but also a lot of nerfs. The big change will be around the end game. Now, I've heard or seen some comments that it's going back to like 0.2 days. No, not at all. I can't see that. I think anyone saying that is got no idea what they're talking about. The patch notes as they are 0.3 with less magnitude of enemies at the very end game, and they're a bit harder. If you've got a build that clips hard, as in like just goes like a bullet a gate, it's not really going to matter. And it's scaled up as you reach into endgame, like everyone was essentially. Okay, so obviously Fate of the Val is the first thing that's coming into the game that we can see. Now, from my lore video, essentially this is at series before the catastrophe happened. So at Ciri, when she's at the pinnacle of her power, before just as she's turning into the Queen of the Val, the Ciri boss that we see in Path of Exile 1, before she gets trapped in her realm. This is her like in the past, and essentially the storyline is Dorian is trying to get you to save her from herself because she's sided with the beast, or the main antagonist in the series. And so yeah, that's basically the lore behind Fate of the Val. I actually think it fits in really thematically, and we're going to see this a lot in Path of Exile 2, where they actually, it's almost like a prologue to Path of Exile 1 and then continuation beyond the storyline of Path of Exile 1. It's really interesting how they're doing that. POE 1 seems to still be very much like the core story arc, and then that's moving into like the Path of Exile 2 core story arc, and then it's, it's a really interesting take on it. I like it. It's pretty good thematically. Okay, so baseline with changes, we're obviously getting the Druid, two Ascendancies with the Druid. I think the Shaman will be the most played. I'm not sure about the Oracle. Yeah, from what I've seen, it just looks pretty lackluster. It's like the Chronomancer sort of thing. I don't know why that's the theme that they're going with, by the way. It just seems really weird. You could have done like a lot more with that, but okay, fine. We haven't seen the third one yet. 20 new skills, primarily primal skills, and these synergize with talismans. And by the way, there are new unique talismans, which is really cool. 35 new supports, which would be really interesting to see how those sort of weigh up and how they can be used, because that just gives us tons more options for the existing builds and potentially new builds that we can play. 8 new lineage supports, and I had a look. There's a lot of changes to lineage supports, which makes them even more powerful, which is really good. 10 new uniques, and they've rescaled a lot of new uniques. There's also 250 new passive skill tree nodes, which is, again, really good. We need a lot of that stuff, so hopefully we've got a lot more kit in the passive trees, in particular warrior, because I just play warriors. Talismans added, so basically two-handed martial weapons, and they're used for shape-shifting, so they just beef up your shape-shifting form, which means you can shape-shift on any class. I actually think that people are probably going to shapeshift more on other classes that are not the Druid, because I feel like the kit on other Ascendancies is better than what we've seen so far with the Druid, but I could be wrong. 4 new augment items with new modifiers that you can craft onto your items, and continued to incrementally improve everything else in the game, including there's obviously CPU fixes that they were talking about in the announcement as well. So Abyss is going core. Basically, it just rolls on maps. Preserve Vertebrae no longer drop. Updated the Well of Souls quest to account for the fact that Abysses no longer spawn in all campaign areas either. So that'll just be like probably still in Act 2 at the at the end of the whatever it is in the boneyard, bone enemy yard area. So yeah, that like we knew that was going to happen. General improvements. This was like a big area. I even noticed this. I had to switch to like just core OBS last league and get rid of Streamlabs, which was actually pretty good. It actually streams work way better now. Just forced me to adapt. But anyway, CPU, they did show us side by side in the gameplay, and basically there's a pretty big improvement to CPU competency now, so that'll be really interesting to see. Okay, so player changes is like we get straight into like pretty big changes here off the cuff, right? Tailwind, which comes from the Gathering Winds, was it Ascendancy? I think it's called. Yeah, Gathering Winds Ascendancy on the Deadeye. This is essentially nerfed. So 1% increased movement speed, 2% increased skill speed, previously 3, 10% increased evasion rate, previously 15. And prevents 1% of damage from deflected hits per stack. One could argue that that last stat is not a bad improvement from a defense standpoint, but is definitely skill speed reduction is like that 1% is a decent chop. Base unarmed attack time is now 1.65 attacks per second, and this is from 1.4. But what we can see like further down is changes to unarmed attack like skills and whatnot. They just do far less damage that scales out across evasion than what they previously did, so they are less powerful by nature now, arguably, or theory, like in theory right now, like without testing it with POB, it's hard to tell. Modifiers to enemies that require you to be considered surrounded no longer reduced to the required number of enemies below 1. So this is constricted command. This is a nerf, but it's also a pretty benign nerf. So it basically means like any modifiers above 5, it is just irrelevant. So basically we just like max roll constricted command and you get the buff when standing still without even being near an enemy. It just means that you have to have like one enemy near you, which I would argue and say that's not a huge issue. It means like when you're out of the presence, sort of, or the surrounded presence, then obviously no buff's going to apply. My simple workaround for that would just be increased presence effect, and then or presence radius. And as soon as an enemy pops onto the screen in any direction, the trigger point will be like if the enemy's active or in like an animation display or something like that and spawning in, what is the trigger for like that enemy to be like, you know, triggering surround? And that's the thing I don't know about, but this is like a pretty nothing burger. Like the constrictor command will still be the strongest helm in the game, based on this change. It's interesting Deepest Tower didn't come back though, and that's probably a bigger endgame rework coming. Rage regeneration now pauses rage decay similarly to other means of gaining rage. This means that your rage will never decay while it is regenerating. That's pretty good. Rage now has like a minimum cost to be charged of 10 rage. Means like attacks that use rage will be less sustainable, but you'll hit harder, but you got better chances of rage. This is partly because like the whole class of the druid is based on rage stacking with the like what it's called the feral forms. Physical damage reduction from armor no longer causes a hit to deal 0 damage. This is mostly targeted at preventing cases where multi-hitting player skills could deal 0 damage to armored monsters at very low levels. In these cases, the hit will now deal 1 damage. Not sure if that was a buff for the player offensively or a nerf defensively, because you've got to remember what they change in this is essentially treated as a global stat. So this actually makes you less tanky, I would consider. But does it? Not sure. Somebody smarter than me, comment on that below. Ignite aura effects, including ignited ground, no longer apply infinite ignites. Instead, they apply regular ignites with standard durations and will reapply them after they expire. The next time the aura applies flammability to the target, same as if ignite had been removed from the target. Ignited ground wasn't a big issue anyway, so they nerfed that in point 2. Because that was like Biru's Anguish or whatever it is. Anyway, interesting changes. Pretty much the big one is Tailwind, and obviously Constricting Command has a bit of a nerf, but outside of that, not huge things that are going to be like game breaking. Now, in good nature, as I had predicted, they would just like straight up hit Deadeye hard. So they've taken away Wind Ward. Now, Wind Ward gave you, I think it's like 3% less damage taken per Tailwind stack. So they've nerfed Tailwind and they've nerfed Wind Ward, but they sort of like increased defense slightly on Tailwind by the deflection increase. So there is like a defensive trade-off here. Overall, it is going to be less defensive, but there's a lot of new nodes in the tree that we don't know about yet, so that could be compensated. Bullseye now requires called shots. Bullseye now applies 10 critical weakness from previously 5, so that's a slight buff too. Added new Mirage Deadeye Ascendancy, so that's like Mirage Archer, I'd assume, which grants the Mirage Deadeye meta skill. Mirage Deadeye, while active, firing a ranged attack projectile will create a Mirage that uses socket of ranged attacks for a short duration, then vanishes. You cannot create another Mirage for a short time after initially creating one. I don't think that's bad. We may actually see some like Bama style play with this, or just like straight up Mirage sort of play. I don't like that is not a skill gem. And like it is an aura, right? Based on when you dodge roll, you can still use it outside of that. But I don't know. I don't like that that's appended to an ascendancy. That feels like just a skill gem that you'd add in, a meta skill gem. But anyway, whatever. What would I know? Pathfinder, Contagious Contamination has been removed. Practical Remedies has been removed. Running Assault now also grants cannot be heavy stunned while sprinting. That's actually pretty good. But when you sprint, you generally light stun. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Added a new Path Seeker multi-choice ascendancy passive skill with the following choices. Path of the Warrior can allocate passives from the warrior starting area. Path of the Sorceress can allocate passives. See, this is really good. So this means if you want to play Incinerate Black Flame now, if that's viable, you also grant 4+ passive starting points. You can do that, and you could also play like Poison Warrior setups and stuff like that. So this is actually going to be a very, very good Ascendancy, because it's got so much competency to just be like anything it wants to be. It can either be a Sork or a Warrior, but masquerading as a Pathfinder, which means you could play at armor base, you could play at ES base, and basically do whatever you want with it. That's actually really cool. I think this is actually a very good Ascendancy at this stage. This one's probably going to get used the most. Amazon Elemental Surge reworked, now grants Elemental Surge skill. When you consume a charge, trigger Elemental Surge to gain 3 Lightning Surges. Surge avatars being reworked, now provides when you consume a charge, trigger Elemental Surge to gain 2 Cold, Lightning, and Fire Surges. I haven't played with Surges, yeah, I haven't played with anything like this on Amazon. I might actually play on Amazon this league, because I'm probably going to play it with like the wolf form or something like that because of the elemental scaling. I actually think Amazon's going to be far better than Druid with beast like transformational skills. But anyway, we'll see what happens. So this is interesting. This could actually be really good. Ritualist sacrifice duration, ritual sacrifice stolen modified duration has been buffed. Yeah, that's buffed. And quality is now 20% set at plus 20 seconds stolen, modified duration, previously plus 2. It's actually pretty cool. That's big. That's a decent buff. Corrupted Life Force now also has you deal 15% more damage to enemies affected by Blood Boil. Buff, I think. Warbringer, this is the best one. Imploding Impacts now also grants fully broken armor you inflict, increases all damage taken from hits instead. That I would consider a buff. Some of the skills in the game, when they went into negative armor, don't actually increase damage. it decreases your damage. And I found this out the hard way with armor break and stuff like that. So this is actually a really good change. And then the Ancestral Warhorn minion summoned by Warbringer's Answer Call Notable now more consistently hits close-up enemies with the second part of its slam attack, so it's got better AI pathing. Titan, this is an interesting one. Surprising Strength has been removed, so this gives you increased strength. This is actually going to make Titan... I'm not going to say less pliable, because this was actually a big source of people stacking a lot of health on Titan with armor, with strength, sorry. I think this actually means like maybe we're getting more life nodes, potentially, or they just want to make it harder for no apparent reason. Crushing Impacts now grants 25% more damage against heavy stun enemies. I like that, and the next one over does even more damage. This is going to be a front load damage dealer. Titan's still very strong. Yeah, it is what it is. So, actually, what does that mean? Surprising Strength. No, Surprising Strength was... Is that the... Oh! Oh, that's actually not bad. Surprising Strength. Oh. No, I'm wrong. Surprising Strength was 50% more damage against heavy stun enemies. So they sort of nerfed it. Still get Mysterious Lineage. Yeah, okay. And that's because I'm assuming... because they added the Mountain Splitter Ascendancy passive, which grants every third slam skill that doesn't create fissures, which you use yourself, causes 1 additional aftershock ahead and to each side of the initial area, requires crushing impacts. So that means if you're not using skills that use fissures, then you're getting more aftershock. I don't know. A lot of people sort of skip that node, and they use like Mysterious Lineage in the armor node. Hulking Form was actually not terrible, but that must mean that we don't need to travel so much to get to we don't have to travel so much to get to Hulking Form. No, I'm wrong. We still have Colossal Capacity. All right, I'm back on page. I'm back with it. All right. This isn't that much of a nerf. It's like a nerf buff. It does reduce your total front side damage. Arguably, people weren't going all the way to the 50% anyway, so this isn't that bad. Aftershocks are pretty strong. All right, Smith of Katava, my favorite class again. Obviously played Smith of Katava Blood Shield Wall last league, and I'm going to be playing it on League Starts. I'm going to League Starter guide for it. We just got like buffed across the board, and it quite frankly is my new favorite Ascendancy. Well, it is always been my favorite Ascendancy and still stands as my favorite Ascendancy. So each notable connected to Smith's Masterwork notable now grants plus 200 to armor. Usually when I play Smith, I put 2 points up into the armor based Ascendancy points, and I put my last 6 points into everything else. So based on that, I get like a free 1200 armor to any build that I play, plus the base plate armor, so 1700 armor multiplied by whatever your increased armor percentage is, which actually makes Smith very tanky. It's insanely tanky. So they've gotten rid of lead lining, heavy bracing, and padded plates. No one was using these nodes because they're totally garbage, right? So added Katavian imprint in place of padded. This gives you 60% increased glory generation. That could be really good. There's also spike plates, gives you 100% increased thorns damage, so it got buffed. The one that I like the most is the heavy bracing. Sorry, tribute of Utula. This gives you 30% increased spirit. Now they showed it as 25% when they showed the Smith in the actual like video. So I don't know if it's 30% or 25%, but this is huge. This means you can run a whole extra aura in many circumstances. And that is enormous considering that they've reduced aura reservations or spirit reservation efficiency. So that we'll look at next. Internal layer now does 100% less crit damage taken. Really strong. Heat proofing has the ability to be unaffected by all damaging ailments instead of just ignite. That is so ridiculously strong. It means that you're essentially ailment immune in your Ascendancy. That's just crazy. So anyway, we'll probably be using that. We'll probably be using the crit notes, to be honest with you. And we just take no damage. We're just going to run shield wall. And yeah, shield. By the way, shield wall didn't get touched by the patch. I don't really care about all of these. They're not really that of any interest to me, but we could probably play around with that. Fire spell on melee skill will actually be quite interesting with the druid setups, and that could actually synergize with the druid stuff. So that could be pretty cool. Infernalist, Seething Body no longer grants while on high Infernal Flame. You and your allies gain presence 50% of damages fire damage. Seething Body now grants gain Elemental Archon when you cast a spell. So there's a lot of Archon nodes in the tree, so that could be considered a buff, maybe. Blood Mage, Whispers of Flesh now also grants target curse by you have 100% reduced life regeneration. There's no change to that, so any build that you were running before, less change to the skill, will probably still work on that Ascendancy. Storm Weaver, Refraction Illusion now grants when colliding, collecting an elemental infusion, gain another different elemental infusion. That's not bad. Storm's Recollection now grants remnants can collect from 50% further away. That's a buff. Multiplying Squalls now grants +2 limit of elemental skills. Previously 1. That's all buffs. Chronomancer, Inevitable Agony granted by Inevitability has been updated. Now ignores the curse limit. That's buff. Now curses targets to take 50% of hit damage dealt to them while cursed again and when curse expires. Yeah, I think that's a buff. I'm not too sure. Gemling Legionnaire was like one of the least played Ascendancies in 0.3. So Thaumaturgical Infusion now grants +1 max cold res per whatever. Same with fire and obviously lightning res. And then the advanced Thaumaturgy notable passive now generates a charge once every 5 seconds instead of 8 seconds. I don't think that that's that good. That's pretty not great, but it does mean you can double a charge pretty quickly. Tactician got huge buffs, I saw. So basically they reduced the cooldown, but they decreased the overall damage. I don't think that's a huge issue because the cooldown on the supporting fire skill being less is probably a good thing. Strategic embarkments. So the changes are artillery blisters no longer grant 40% increased immobilization buildup. It's 20% skill speed. That's very good. Siege Blister no longer grants 50% increased damage against immobilized enemies. Now grants 25% more damage against immobilized enemies, so that's a nerf. Mortar Cannon now grants 25% of damage gained as extra fire from 15. So Mortar Cannon was already really strong, and now it's stronger, unless they nerfed it, and we'll see down below. Now we got added Spell Totem of Embankment Auras. Spell Totems grant 50% increased crit chance. This is actually not a bad Ascendancy for like Spell Totems, and in particular there's a lot of Endurance Charge nodes. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of Endurance Charge stacking capabilities that come into this league, and a lot of benefits of doing it. They're probably just going to add in the PoE 1 benefits of Endurance Charges via Skill Tree, just to make it harder. But anyway, it'll still work. Witch Hunter, Witchbane has been buffed. Enemies. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, so Witchbane triggers quicker, which is good. Ceremonial Ablution now instead grants Sorcery Ward, also protects against physical and chaos damage. That's a big buff. Very big buff. Invoker just seems like a benign change. So, yeah, it's like, protect me from harm. It's got buffed. Don't know why they would do that. Soulspring Eternal now additionally grants meta skills of 50% increased spirit reservation efficiency. It's buffed. There's a cooldown on Unbound Avatar of 12 seconds. That's a nerf. Unbound Fury is slowed down, I think, as well. And Shocking and Igniting now grants 1 Unbound Fury instead of 2. So there are some nerfs or whatever. I just don't even think that you could nerf Invoker enough to actually nerf it enough at this stage. I feel like the whole game was made on Invoker and Deadeye at this point with the way that they function. But anyway, so that's still going to be very strong. Acolyte or Chayula, I don't really want to go too far into this because I just don't think this Ascendancy is all that good. So yeah, there's no real changes here that I could see that were like of huge amounts of benefit. Okay, so now for the big changes. This is the stuff that we want to go through in detail. So obviously we get 250 new passive skill tree or passive skills to the Druid side of the passive tree. This is part of one of its ascendancies. So that could be good, it could be bad, it depends on what they look like, we'll have to see. The values of flammability magnitude on the passive tree have been increased massively. That was a pretty big issue, so yeah. Instances of gaining Flame, Ice, and Lightning Archon have been changed to Elemental Archon to better support this. So this just means there's more accessibility, so this is a buff. Hollow Palm has been nerfed. So you get 1% more attack speed per 75% evasion rating. That's like a, instead of 25%. So that's almost like a, what, 60% nerf, something like that. But the base attack speed has been increased by 0.25 from, 1.4 to 1.65. I don't think that is as good. Like, that's trying to sell like a lemon and telling us that it's a Ferrari. I think that's to try and kill that build down a little bit, to be honest with you. It's still going to be powerful, just not as powerful. You're not going to be one-hitting stuff with it as easily earlier on. It's going to take a bit more investment. Walker of the Wilds Keystone has been removed, and its effects have been moved into newly added lineage supports. Equilibrium now grants Cold Infusion Remnant. Yeah, okay, so it just synergizes with infusions. Crimson Assault now also grants 50% more magnitude of bleed that you inflict. That's pretty good. Passives that granted reduced movement speed penalty for using skills while moving on passive tree has had their values lowered. More passives on the tree now grant the stat to make up for this. That's a bit of a nerf. It's forcing you to invest into more points, which means you have to spread your tree out and it becomes harder to build. Added 3 new attack area of effect clusters to the monk part of the passive tree. It didn't need that, but okay. Added 2 projectile speed clusters to the passive tree in the merc section. Added a new bow cluster to the ranger section. Added a new cluster between the witch and the monk called Remnant Attraction. I'm assuming this is like so you can collect in remnants and infusions, and they just like hoover up to you. Added 2 projectile speed clusters. Oh, sorry, we're going through that. The Grand Tribute notable from Heart of the Well Jewel now has remnants can be collected from 80% further away. Yeah, I figured that would be the case. That's a buff. Added small nodes on the passives to grant remnant pickup range. Done in a number of areas. Small passive connected to Invigorating Grandeur and Everlasting Glory notables now grant 20% increased presence area of effect. The Pure Power notable no longer grants 2% increased lightning damage per 10 in, instead now grants 10% more. That's a huge nerf. That's an enormous nerf if you are int stacking. So int stacking becomes less light. They're addressing lightning damage essentially. Wildstorm no longer grants 15% more max lightning damage, and instead grants gain 4% damage as extra lightning, cold, and 10 plus dex. Tandem Assault passive node to the Hunting Companion. Passive tree node to the renamed Tandem Assault passive. Okay, so it's just a rename. Change the stat on several small passive trees around Inspiring Ally, Hunting Companion, Sikkim, and Nourishing Ally nodes. Companion cluster, small passive skills now generally no longer grant both companions deal increased damage and increased damage while your companion is in your presence. So they want you to specialize into that by the looks. Okay, so support gem changes. Now we're getting really into the meat and bone. Crescendo, all Crescendo gems are now int gems. Perpetual Charge is now an intelligence gem from Dex. Mark for Death is now strength. I love that because it means we can use it on Warrior. Gambling Shot is now intelligence. or Gamble Shot, and Bramble Slam is now a support gem, which is pretty cool. That means that we can actually use that. Disabled Font of Rage, yeah, it's pretty useless. Disabled Ricochet 3. Inevitable Crit has been renamed to Inexorable Crit. Why? I don't know. World Drop lineage supports are now less common overall. Specific lineage supports have been adjusted relative to others. I hope that doesn't mean like the big ticket ones, because they're already really hard to get. Tului's Bloodletting lineage now grants 2% extra fizz per life. Previously 10 life per 10 life cost. Up to 40% no longer has a cost multiplier. That is definitely less viable than what it was, but it'll still be strong. Zoph's Pyre got a buff. Zoph Esh's Radiance got a buff. Tool Stillness got a buff. Unitol's Embrace, buff. Ina's Beast Right now grants killing blows from supporting strike skills against rare monsters. Grant 2 modifiers for 5 minutes, previously 40 seconds. That's really good. Like, it actually makes it playable to a degree. Zarok's Refrain now grants supporting spells Echo 3 times, previously 2. And now grants echoes from supporting spells of 40% increased area. That's going to be really good with like the lightning call skill that the druid has, so that's actually pretty cool. Uruk's Smelting now grants a fully breaking armor with supporting skills causes affected targets to permanently take 5% increased damage, up to 20%, previously 2 up to 20%, so that's a slight buff. Valenta's Propulsion now grants 75% increase of increases and reductions to spell speed, also apply to projectile speed instead of 50%. It's the buff. Arn's Citadel now no longer grants skills of 30% less effect or support skills deal support skills there. There is a really strong shield wall build that came out last league that uses this, and it just got super buffed. Like, it was already ridiculous, and now it's going to be like a one-hitting machine. Tekrod's Revenge now grants minions have supported skills die 20 seconds after their life is reduced to 0 from 10 seconds, so your minions are alive for a little bit longer, and they attack at up to 40% instead of 20%, so it's a big buff. Ridgewald's Ferocity, they're straight up 10% increased attack speed buff, so that's going to be pretty good. Ratha's Assault, that looks like it's been buffed. Yeah, it's been buffed. Arjun's Medal now grants 100% chance to load a bolt into a crossbow on dealing a killing blow. Auto load. So yeah, that's actually really strong. That's going to be a chase. Kael'm's Madness now grants supported skills deal 20% less damage from 40. That means Sunder or off support, off secondary skills using Sunder as your map clear skills are actually significantly more powerful. So that's quite a good change. Toa's Tending now grants totems created by supported skills of 25% more life instead of 50. This is because there were builds where people were using totem death to basically do like damage against enemies. So they've dropped the totem life, but they've increased the base physical damage by 20%, or up to 20% from 10. So they have less life, but they do more damage based on the life. That is an aggregate nerf, but it doesn't look like it's more powerful. At Series Allure, that is a buff. Garakan's Resolve looks like it might be a buff. Kurgel's Leash, that's a buff. Arakali's Lust now grants supported skills deal 8% more damage with hits from each poison, up to 40% straight up buff. This dropped a fair bit, and this is definitely more usable now with like all the vine skills and everything. Tacti's IR is actually very strong, and also it's got doubled in its faster poison progression. And the other big plus here is like with Pathfinder, potentially you could use the vine skills, proc poisons, and you could get more access to rage, because you can get access to rage in 2 other areas with the new Pathfinder Ascendancy point. And also this will work really well with Druids. Druid may just be the best, like, poison build in the game, though. A-list Chimes now grants 25% chance to gain a power charge when expending combo with supporting skills per combo expended. This chance can exceed 100%. Previously 10%. That's pretty strong. That means you got a good chance of getting power charges now and sustaining them. Arbiter's Ignition now has a 100% chance to gain Elemental Archon. It's actually a buff. Nova projectiles no longer cause supported skills to gain 4 additional projectiles. Also, yeah, so this has nerfed Nova projectiles pretty significantly. Nova projectile 2, I think that's a nerf. Piety's Mercy renamed to Dominus's Grasp. It's interesting. It's pretty funny, actually. It's very ironic. Dominus Grasp now instead supports skills chain 100% more times. That's actually really cool. Chain 1, 2, and 3. They've changed this totally. Culmination support more now does more damage per combo. Now has a cap of 10 combos. We've got number 2 has a cap of 20 combos. They do increased damage per combo. Stormfire now causes enemies shocked by supporting skills to take a percentage of ignite damage as lightning damage as well as fire. That's actually pretty strong. That's a much better, and that'll actually work really well with the Druid, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of synergy there. Living Lightning looks like that got a slight nerf as well. Enraged Warcry just now treated as spending rage. Upheaval and Branching Fissures now no longer is restricted to melee attacks. They can now support any skill which creates fissures. Cool. That means they can support spells. Impact Shockwaves now actually makes Aftershocks, allowing interactions with Aftershock specific area and damage modifiers. Previously, it was actually a variant of Melee Splash, but did not benefit from those. This also allows a strike to cause both Impact Shockwave, Aftershock, and Melee Splash from the same hit, so a double dip effect. Impact Shockwave can now support non-strike wind attacks. So there's like a good mish of buffs and nerfs in here. The nerfs are really targeted around those upper end builds that were just totally abusing mechanics to get higher projectiles, speed, and things like that. It's sort of pacing the game down. I'm not negative to these changes. I don't think they're that bad. They're sort of just addressing issues and readjusting where the meta should sit. I like things like Stormfire. That's not a bad change. And I'm not really, I'm impartial to a number of others. I do like the changes to like Chaos Madness. Obviously, I'm a melee player and a warrior player, so like I'm gonna say that stuff, but I'm sure there'll be people that will be quite upset with some of these changes. I like this Arn Citadel is pretty cool as well. It means we could just like run it on any shield skill. It means we can like pop shield wall in front of enemies, blow it up, and like have stupid amounts of damage. But yeah. All right, next one, skill changes. Okay, so skill changes, and there are many. Number 1, Frozen Mandibles can no longer be used as a Spectre or Tame Beast. So people were obviously running this and they were super strong and doing insane damage. So they basically went, you can't use them anymore. And that sucks because that was really good. Buff summon beef specters, variants of certain monsters have been buffed. Maybe. Maybe we'll find another Frozen Mandibles. Palm skill movement has been adjusted to reduce case of which where the player successfully uses skills but fails to hit an enemy after dashing. Ice fragments are now only able to hit enemies once per group of fragments created. That's definitely a nerf. The per target hit limits on Firestorm, Ice Storm, Rain of Arrows, and Hailstorm are now displayed. Whirlwind now takes on elements from overlapping allied elemental ground for 8 seconds instead of 4 seconds, which is you could consider a buff. Added wind type for the following skills: Twister or wind, like the identifier. So we've got Twister, Whirling Slash, Wind Blast, Wing Blast, Whirling Lance, Wind Serpent, Fury, Tornado, Tornado Shot, and projectiles created by Staggering Palm. Fix the following skills having modifiable limits that were not described. So it's like Earthquake, Frozen Locust, Earth Shatter, Shield Wall. Shield Wall's pretty good. Because it's my favorite skill. Oh, fix the following skills having modifier that were not described as limits. Okay, well that's fine. These skills can now be supported by overabundance. So we can do that with Shield Wall. That actually makes it technically stronger. We could triple the damage. Because it's got a 2 limit, I think, a 2 or 3 limit. Acidic Concoction no longer consumes poison, nor triggers acidic bursts from innate objects, like Vine Arrow's plant. That's a nerf, because people were actually using that to do like insanely stupid damage, so that sucks. Invocations now have 0.2 second cooldown. Freezing Salvo is now a tier 3 skill gem. I'd assume that that is nerf. Windblast is tier 3. You can get this like by tier 2 or whatever. So maybe actually that's an improvement. Either way, is what it is. Attrition is now offered as a tier 4 spirit gem. It's not too bad. Vaulting Impacts is now offered as a tier 5 spirit gem. Ice Tip Arrows is now offered as a tier 5 spirit gem. We get into the changes. Ancestral Cry got a pretty big buff. Its trigger point for Volcanic Steps wasn't really the big buff. I actually made a build with this last league, and now that build is 2 times stronger than what it was previously with Volcanic Eruption. And you would expect Volcanic Eruption itself to have 2 times the amount of damage. You would think that. So that build was taken down like T3 pinnacles. So now it's 2 times as strong and stupidly tanky. Ancestral Warrior totems no longer have 25% less totem attack speed, which is good. Arc has increased magnitudes, or magnitude of shock inflicted. Don't know what the difference between... Well, increased is a nerf. So more would be indicative of on the cap, and then 50% more. 50% increased magnitude would be a percentage of overall magnitude, not 50%. I don't know, it could be a buff too, not too sure. Arctic Armor, nerfed. Yeah, nerfed across the board. Has more freeze build-up and magnitude, but yeah, its overall damage is lower, and people were using that with like armor break combinations to do like auto bomber builds, so they have essentially killed that. Armor breaker, like, does anyone even really use armor breaker? That's been buffed. Attrition, 30 spirit instead of 60. That's pretty good. Ball lightning now deals more damage at earlier levels and more damage at later levels. But now has 375% more chance to shock instead of 750. And fire infusions do that actually got a good buff, so that's actually stronger. That could be pretty good with like Molnir builds. Barrier Invocation, now 30 Spirit. That's pretty good, and that's probably going to be used a lot on the Druid. Cast on Minion Death, 30 Spirit. There's a really... They've increased zombie... charging zombies as well, or zombies, and that actually could be pretty good this league. Charge Regulation no longer grants more skill speed while you have Frenzy Charges. It just increases skill speed, like flat increase. While you have Frenzy Charges at gem levels 14 to 20. Interesting choice to do that. Fire Infused Comets now deal more damage. I don't know why they would do that. Like, Comet builds, it's already did stupid levels of damage, right? So now it does even stupider levels of damage. So whatever, like, one of the biggest hitting builds in the league was like 275 mil. Or like a big hitting build, sorry. Using Comet, and now it just does even more damage. So like anyone playing Comet just got a buff. Detonating Arrow, buffed. Not that largely though. Disengage, let's be honest, does anyone really use Disengage? Elemental Conflux is now much lower on the Spirit Reservation. That's actually pretty good. It means they're saying like, oh, you can play more auras. Electrocuting Arrow now has 110% attack speed, and now deals less attack damage. Projectile now converts 80% physical to lightning instead of 50. So one would argue that would actually be more damage if you've scaled up lightning. Escape Shot, no one really cares. Explosive Spear now gains +1 limit of lodged spears every 8 gem levels. Ooh. I really like Explosive Spear, and one of its big problems was a 1 spear limit. Frenzy Charge and Powered Explosions now deal 724% from 543. That got hugely buffed. Now has 100% increased ignite magnitude from... Damn! Frenzy Charge and Powered Explosion Length now increases with every level from 4 to 5.9 meters at gem level. Oh my god! Explosive Spear. Alright, we're putting that down as builds that bring back, because I have an Explosive Spear Katava and build Smith of Katava. Buff and good for Jorgen to make an epic build with. That is freaking awesome. I love that. That's fantastic. That is actually really good. That means that 1+ limit every 8 levels to level 16 if you go +4. So if you scale levels on the spear, plus you'd run like overabundance, you could end up like lodging like 5 or 6 spears in something and then like just one-shotting things, because you can scale the damage on that insanely high. So like they scale really well. So explosive spear, and with that's actually, that could be a meta setup, to be honest with you. I'm probably gonna do it as a second build. But yeah. Anyway, I'm excited. Eye of Winter got reduced cooldown, so if you did like cast on crit, something like that, that could actually be pretty good. Cast on crit on the monk, I would play that. On the invoker would be not too bad. And also, because monk, the invoker got buffs in relation to its metagem reservations as well. 50% increased reservation of fear, 50% increased spirit reservation efficiency would mean that you could play cast on crit Eye of Winter, and that could actually be very good. Especially with all like the changes to like projectiles and stuff like that. You could do like spell level scaling to... There's the lineage gem that allows spell level to apply to projectile gems. That could actually be really good. That actually, thinking on that could be a really fun build. Fangs of Frost buffed. I don't like the way that it explodes when you like do the whole like disengage thing. So, or like the parry. Sorry. So like this is good. I don't know. I'm on the bench about it, but you know I'll take it. Well, it's more freeze build up. It's just like freeze build up. It's not really damage. The damage on it's actually not terrible. It's just not great. Flame Blast cooldown is reduced to 10 seconds. It's got buffed. Fragmentation rounds. Now has bolts pierce 2 targets at gem level 1, scaling to bolts pierce 5 targets, gem level 24, previously 2 at all gem levels. That's buffed, so fragmentation rounds are on the cards for potentially being a lot better. Like, you can scale them really, really efficiently anyway, because all bow skills are pretty damn strong. Freezing Mark no longer causing an explosion. Instead, Freezing Mark marked target grants a buff that grants extra damage as cold damage for a duration until you mark another target. That's not bad. Frostbolt, more magnitude of chill. Okay, that could be good. Frostwall, lightning infused Frostwall, pardon me, now deals 5 to 103 from 4 to 68, scaling to 23 to 44. Like, why do they keep scaling lightning damage so much? Look, Frostwall's still pretty strong. Like, obviously that was abused in 1.0, or sorry, 0.1, but yeah. Frozen Locust no longer deals 80% less damage if destroyed within 0.5 seconds by something other than you. Ice Crystals no longer has collision, now correctly works with increase to limit. Frozen Locust Ice Crystals no longer have hidden less damage taken from allies. That could be good. Frozen Locust Ice Crystals have up to 9,536 maximum life. Man, that is really, really different. That is like a multiple of 10, so that is pretty massively buffed. Gathering Storms, perfect timing window has been increased. I like that. Starting to realize this isn't like a revision back to 0.1 or 0.2. This is like optimization, and I like it. Ghost Dance now has a maximum of 3 Ghost Shrouds at any gem level. All gem levels, sorry. Previously 3 to 5. Duration has been doubled though at gem levels 4 to 20. And then quality now provides up to 20% increased reservation efficiency. I like that. That's good. I'll take it. Glacial Cascade increases from 80 it's an 80% conversion instead of 60%. Final Burst now converts 100% physical to cold damage from 60. That's a buff. So if you're scaling cold damage and stuff like that, and you run that, you're going to get a better outcome. Man, that's some crooked. Sorry, looks stupid with a crooked hat. All right, so Glacial Lance. Glacial Lance wasn't very good. I tried it last league. I tried Chaos Conversion, and it just didn't work very well. But you could make it work if you have the right setup with Amazon, I feel. And also, you could probably make it work pretty well with Druid now, too. Maybe not, though. Frenzy Charge and Powered Explosion now deals up to 670% from 598. That's just not enough. Attack speed is now... Like, it could clear whole screens. It's really strong. Explosion has a lot more freeze build-up. Now has equal magnitude of chill inflicted by freeze build-up. Converts 80% of physical from 60. Actually, that could be pretty strong because of the conversion. So we'll have to try it. Hailstorm rounds, I know people were running around with that. That got slightly nerfed. Now has 150% more reload speed. That's pretty good. Herald of Thunder got nerfed across the board. So it's still viable, though. That's not going to be not viable. That's still very viable. Hex Blast got buffed again. So now it's maximum 10 explosions per cast. Previously 3. That's much stronger. That's good. Ice Nova. I don't really care what they do with Ice Nova, to be honest with you. Or Ice Shards. I'm just disinterested. Ice Shot. Conversions now 80%. Increased Angular Cone. That was already a really strong skill, and now that's still strong. Ice Tipped Arrows. Ice Fragmentation Explosion is now 1.8 meters. Powered attacks also gain 100% of physical damage converted to cold. It has an increased duration as well, so that could be pretty strong. Incinerate was really strong with Black Flame again, especially on Pathfinder, and now that Pathfinder has the ability to start from the sort of Sork area, it just makes it so much stronger. Now additionally deals 11.1 fire damage per second at gem level, scaling from 57.5 fire damage per second at gem level 20. Ignites ground durations now 8 seconds. Like, that's a total buff across the board. So I'm going to say Incinerate could be viable on LS. And it was last league. People were like, oh, it doesn't work. And then people were like making some of the most insane Pathfinder builds with it. So, yeah. Killing Palm now grants a power charge if a colorable enemy dies while you are dashing to them. Now also quickly dashes and strikes additional valid targets. It's a pretty benign change. Lightning Arrow no longer bypasses charge up time on Lightning Rod's burst. Instead, the burst caused by Lightning Arrow can occur once every 0.1 seconds. Projectiles now convert 80% fizz to lightning. That's the buff side. Beam now converts 100% fizz to... Is that a nerf? I think it might be a nerf. It looks like it could be a nerf. There's definitely a nerf further down. Lightning Conduit now provides 10% more damage with hits per 5% shock. Previously 20. Quality now provides 20% more lightning damage instead of... That's a buff, so that's going to be pretty good with Molnir. It was already pretty good with Molnir. Lightning Rod, limit of active lightning rods allowed is now 10 from 20. Yeah, I got a pretty big nerf. It was already OP and now got wrecked. So let's just like stack this up. They nerfed the Deadeye. They nerfed the skill for Lightning Arrow, and they nerfed the synergy for Lightning Rods, and they nerfed Herald of Thunder. So yeah, they just hit that all across the board. Oh, and there's more nerfs as we read down. Lightning Warp, slight nerf, not too bad. Lingering Illusion now lingers for 3 seconds instead of 1.5. It now has 1% of your maximum life, previously 15, and now causes an illusion to drop Remnant to grant power charge on pickup rather than granting a power charge when the illusion is destroyed. That's actually pretty good. That's not a bad change. Living Bomb, buffed across the board. Big buff. Living Bomb, big buff. So Living Bomb, pretty dope. Magnetic Salvo, this has just got more conversion. That's actually going to be pretty strong. So yeah. Mana Tempest now has effects of Mana Tempest linger for 2 seconds after leaving it. That's pretty good. That's a buff. Oil Grenade, 4-second cooldown. Cool. Perfect Strike, buff. Permafrost Bolts, looks like a buff. Plasma Blast, not sure if buff or nerf or benign. Primal Strikes, Final Strike has plus 20 melee strike range from plus 5. It also does... Ooh, this was really strong. So you could play this on Monk and it was pretty strong. So that's buffed. So it's better. Rain of Arrows now only consumes 1 frenzy charge. Now deals pretty big increase. Now fires 150% more arrows if a frenzy charge was consumed. Removes removed fires 50% more arrows per frenzy charge. Okay, this is my favorite one here. Raised Zombies. Empowered Zombies now deal up to 253% more damage with hits at its max peak level 20 from 100%. So it got a pretty big increase in damage. The biggest issue I see with this though is empowered. So that could be a pain. Anyway, Rapid Assault buffed. I actually made a Rapid Assault build last league and it was an Armor Break Rapid Assault build. Now thinking on an Armor Break, a Rapid Assault, Armor Break, Warbringer would be insanely strong. So that could be a contender for a really good league starter, by the way, if you're looking for league starters. So we're looking at Spearhead Explosions now deal 2... Actually, no, this is a pretty good synergy. It's not base flat damage, which is still really strong. You could do Warbringer, you could do Armor Break Warbringer with Explosive Spear. And you could even do like, you know, you could go a number of routes, but I think Warbringer is the best here. And basically, yeah, you would get 546% attack damage increase to Spearhead Explosion. So you just hit the enemies with Rapid Assault, and then you hit them with the Explosive Spear, and then you can stack more Explosive Spears, and then basically they then blow up the spears that you put in the enemy, and yeah, really, really strong. Reap now has base crit of 14% from 11. Like, that was already a stupidly strong build. There was a really strong Reap League starter that went around last league, and they didn't change Blood Mage very much as it either, so that's still going to be very viable. Rower Mount got nerfed, so Rower Mount no longer increases your movement speed, and now has 100% reduced movement speed penalty. Everyone that was running Rower Mount, they're going to be crying. I'm just going to be like sitting there laughing at them a little bit, going, ha! Shield Wall. They don't want the game being played like that, right? That's the reality. I don't think it's bad that people play it like that, but I also think it's a bit exploitative of some of the mechanics. So, like, that it's, are you surprised it got nerfed? Is probably the question you should ask yourself. Sacrifice now grants minion revive 46 to 40% more slowly. Previously 66 to 60. Skeletal Reavers, they didn't function properly, so now they actually get their 6% attack. These are actually going to be very, very strong. Let's go. So I was actually playing around with this before I got bored. Skeletal Reavers. I think this is going to be a very good minion configuration. So yeah. Shard Scavenger buff duration is now 3 seconds from 2. That's not bad. Shattering Palm now causes an explosion if the target dies while you are dashing to them. It's pretty cool. Shock Chain Arrow just has conversion chain. Flat damage increase. Decrease. Shockwave now does decreased damage, so that sucks. Shield Charge Collision has been buffed, so we've got more damage. Siege Cascade, it's been reduced. The percentage damage has been reduced, but it gets a flat 100%, so arguably that's actually stronger. Snipe, Icy Blast does up to 2. That's just totally ridiculous. So that's pretty cool. Soul Offering Spike now that got buffed by 2 seconds. So that's what 30%, 33.33% recurring buff. Spark Infusions. I'm not an expert at Spark, so if you're looking, this did get a buff. But if you're looking for advice around Spark and Arc and stuff like that, that is an anime princess question. That dude knows his stuff when it comes to that. Yeah, I like this. Spira Solaris. So Spira Solaris was pretty useless. And the reason why it was useless was because of the glory generator. So, and the heavy stun requirement. It didn't work. This means you could play this with, and by the way, like to preface this, Spear of Solaris is insanely strong. Like, it is insanely strong if you can trigger it and figure out how to get it to work. So, this is actually very strong if you're going to play like an explosive spear build, which I would know. I've mucked around with it for a couple of leagues now, or a couple of patches. So, this is actually a pretty good buff. And this thing would be like, you know, tap one, hit, kill enemy. So, I really like this. This is cool. Spiral Volley got buffed. Staggering Palm. Not sure about that. Storm Lance, Frenzy Charge and Powered Lance Shock's duration is now 8 seconds instead of 6. That's buffed. Stormcaller Arrow. Projectile now converts 80%. Bolt now has shock enemies as though dealing 50% more damage. Bolts now convert 100% from 80. That's not bad. Sunder now has 40% base attack speed. Yeah, boy! Thunder was already pretty strong last league, and when you couple it with Kaom's Madness with like Earth Shatter, which is what I did, it's stupidly strong. So basically, it's pretty good. It's going to be pretty good. Sunder was already really strong, and people were front loading with Titans with Sunder, and in particular with the new Titan Ascendancy, Sunder puts out fissures. So basically, you could make it even stronger, or you could aftershock it. Either or, it'll take full advantage of the new Titan Ascendancy nodes. Supercharged Slam now has an attack time override of 0.85 seconds from 1 second. I don't know what that means. That could be good, that could be bad. Not sure. Would be really cool to see this come back. We might even try and dedicate ourselves to making a Supercharged Slam build this league. Tempest Spell, what we got? Impact Radius has been buffed. Shockwave Radius has been buffed. Hitbox has been increased. That got a buff. There you go. Thunderous Sleep, sort of buffed, not sort of that great. Toxic Domain now regenerates 54 to 82 life per second, and all Gemlords, so got buffed. Yeah, Toxic Growth now has a limit of 12 pustules, that got buffed. Vaulting Impact, Broken Stance, by applying Vaulting Impact, is now a 60% duration and is removed after taking 10 hits. I didn't even know that it had Broken Stance, to be honest with you. But that's pretty cool. Vine Arrow now grants +1 to plants at gem levels 12 to 19. Volcanic Fissure, that got buffed. Voltaic Grenade got buffed. Voltaic Mark, don't really care that much. Wave of Frost. Now can be used to cancel other actions. Now has equal magnitude of chill inflicted as freeze buildup. Whirling Assault, baseline movement of Whirling Assault has been reworked to be more fluid. Now has +1 second to total attack time, previously 1.4. Now has, yeah, but does that mean like Whirling Assault was really strong before? People were using that as a movement speed. So I bet you they've killed that and they just haven't put it in the patch notes. Wind Dancer. Oh man, that really sucks. Wind Dancer got nerfed. Oh, jeez. Man, I was going to say another word there. Wind Dancer was so good. It was such a damaging skill. I used it on so many builds. I'm still going to use it on every build. Yeah, look, that's expected. It's just such a good skill. It's still going to be a good skill. At this like half the damage, but when you do like 400,000 DPS or 500,000 DPS with like Wind Dancer and mapping, it just kills ads. You know, it's not there for bossing. It's just there for easy pack clear. The thing that I have not seen at any point in the support gem changes is the interaction between bursting plague, bleed, and poison. And so I'm going to assume that that is still a functional defense layer in everything that we're planning to do. So yeah, I'm going to say that the bleed, poison bleed loop on like shield skills and stuff like that, and like Wind Dancer is still very much viable at this point. So my shield wall Smithic Atava has only seen buffs so far, and it's fantastic. I am very excited by that. Okay, so we're still going. I'm starting to get frazzled. These are very big patch notes. All right, so Grand Spectrums. Sapphire variant added. We now get more elemental resistance, so that's a buff. We won't go into that next one. Maxolotl's Machination now has increased effect of Soul Cores up to 333%. It's actually pretty good. That item's used in a lot of different builds as well, so that's pretty good. Adorned has been buffed. It has a peak of 150%, so Adorned stacking is now more feasible. Asylum improved pretty much everything. Zoph's Blood increased to negative 25% fire res to enemies around you from 10. Increased fire resistance as well. Choir of Storm, buffed. Pandemonia's buffed. Controlled Metamorphosis, buffed. They got rid of the 3 chaos resistance stuff, so buffed. Savalin, buffed. Yeah, Defiance of Destiny is the wildest one. Now recovers 20 to 30% of missing life before being hit by enemy. Previously 10 to 20. I think this is the stat in POE 1, to be honest with you. That's insanely strong. This is now going to be a really hefty chase item. Wrath Pith got a bit of a nerf. That's understandable because it's crazy. Hammer of Faith is now up to 350% increased physical damage. That's actually pretty cool. It gives you like an aura. It gives you like a shrine buff every few seconds or whatever. Lionized Glare could be a buff. Whispering Ice just across the board just got a total buff. There is a dude called Kelvin POE who's been doing Whispering Ice builds in POE 1 for like years. He plays the same build at every single league. This is fantastic and up his alley, I would say. It did get nerfs here, but the gem level buff is worth it at the end of the day. What else? Brassstone buffed. Meligo's Virtuosity possibly buffed. That's probably because you can reroll items in Corruption Chambers now, so yeah. Ghost Wrath buffed. Cloak of Flame probably buffed. Cloak of Flame buffed. It's just crazy. Lightning Coil buffed. The Surrender, not really a buff. It's got a lot of other little changes here as well. Nothing really crazy. Thunder Fist. This was already a super expensive item. Buffed. 15% base crit from 5%. But this is also because they changed a lot of stuff around the unarmed combat stuff. Deals 40% more lightning damage at all levels. I feel like this is definitely a build that's going to be pretty strong. They're sort of erring more into the itemization with builds and the skill tree and less from the skill gems from what I feel. So yeah, across the board, it's not too bad. Grip of Cruelamak has more buff potential. Yeah, and then we go into like item changes. This is actually like, I'll just do this in one big segment. So like there's a lot of nerf in here. A lot of this is now like limits on runes that I noticed. I had a quick read of this earlier. Basically, like almost every like individual rune has like a limit now, so you can't stack them. So like last league, I don't think it was Sequala was one of them. Anyway, it was the attack speed runes. You would like stack a ton of attack speed runes, and you'd just be laughing all day long. It's interesting that like soul cores are limited as well. So like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't necessarily like that soul cores are limited. This feels like counterintuitive. unless they've added a lot of stuff into the tree, right? There's like a ton of stuff they've added in, and this, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. They've changed base item modifiers. Totemic clubs have been changed. A lot of two-handed clubs and mauls have been changed. Base attack speeds have been increased. Crit chances increased. Base damage, base defenses have been enhanced, which is really good. Bit of a drop there with broad spears. Barb spears, they're a little bit slower. Maces are a tiny bit faster from what I saw there. So crit or, yeah. Okay. Interesting. No? Oh, it's a nerf, but a damage increase. Oh yeah, base damage uplifts on two-handed maces, but the speed's been decreased. That could mean things are either more powerful or not more powerful, depending on the type of build that you're playing. Anyway, we'll have to see how that affects the game. I don't really worry too much about these. These are the essences. Yeah, look, I don't know how I feel about a lot of these. The issues I got here is like this limitation of 1. I don't really like that. I think that's very limiting, but anyway. It could be better soul cores and stuff coming into the game based on the new mechanic, which is probably why, so. Alright, in-game changes. I actually don't really care all that much for this. Like, I'm not a map optimizer. I'm a Alk and Go sort of player. I'm going to play the league mechanics and stuff like that, so I'm not really going to go into detail on that. Monster changes, same deal. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really make too much difference now. Like, the game's sort of going in a certain trajectory. Interface changes, I could not care less about GUI changes. It just doesn't mean that much. The only thing here, when switching between controller and keyboard and character selection screen, the game will remember if you use WSD or not. That's pretty cool. Aside from that, I don't use WASD, and obviously MTX bug fixes and stuff like that are the other sort of things. So yeah, as an overall, I think like very big set of patch notes, a lot of changes coming in from a balance standpoint. Do I think that this is a shift in the direction of 0.2 or 0.1? Absolutely not. There's nothing here that would preclude to me coming to that conclusion. I think this is a continuation of balance from 0.3. The things that I do agree on are like the changes to like ridiculous skills, like, you know, lightning arrow, right? I just, like, people say, oh, Jorgen, you hate lightning arrow. At this stage, I sort of dislike it. I just will never play that skill because, number one, I don't like it, and number two, it's not my playstyle. That's not to say it is still it's still going to be a very strong skill. Like, nothing's going to change in that respect. The pacing of the end game is going to slow for people who are relying on rower. Probably those players are going to get frustrated with the game as well. But that'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. The other endgame changes that are significant are around like the chain, and I think we sort of glazed over the top of it. Where was endgame changes? So there's like a ton of changes in here, but the biggest one that they sort of spoke about was at that at that upper end, they're changing from like a 30% reduction to pack size and then increasing things by 30 to 40%. Now, there's some people that were saying that will affect the drop rates. I don't necessarily think it will affect the drop rates the way people think it will. People tend to like jump to conclusions, and this sort of happens every single league where it's like, oh, the drops are nerfed, and then yeah, but the reality is, like, you know, it also depends on the modifiers, and they changed how the modifiers craft onto endgame. So they basically say like, you know, waystones can no longer be instilled with liquid emotions, stuff like that. So like now maps just have better innate rolls on them. Like they roll more potent positive mods and less potent negative mods, with enemies being more tuned. And obviously map bosses, I think, will probably be about the same as what they were last league. So they said that they weren't going to afflict that onto the map bosses. So you can consider the difficulty curve with the way the map bosses were changed at, in the mid patch last league in 0.3 to be somewhat of how the end game is going to be balanced as well. I don't really have a big issue with that. I don't think it will slow the game terribly. It's just going to depend on the build that you play. I think the players, again, that are going to not like this are going to be the players that relied on builds that use like row amounts and stuff like that. I couldn't care less because I play like shield wall and Smithic Katava Thorns builds and all other sorts of different stuff. So it's not like a big concern for players that play like me. I play big tanks, so I don't think it's a huge issue. But yeah, anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. So yeah, that's my take on the patch notes. Do I think it's a bad patch? I don't think it's a bad patch. I think it's got a pretty significant amount of upper and lower balance, and obviously a lot of new stuff being added in at that like more technical level and like skill level, and as in like gems and stuff like that. Content wise, it did feel a bit lacking. It sort of was like a very mid announcement. I sort of expected a lot more. I would have thought that total would have made its way in, and it didn't. Obviously, we didn't get delved, so I'm always chuffed about that. Do I like the look of the new mechanic? 100%. I'll do it. I'm going to do a video on that a little bit later, maybe tonight or tomorrow, and we'll talk about where the inspirations come from for that mechanic. I don't think there's anything there for me to like glaze GGG on and be like, oh, they're doing an absolutely exceptional job. I think they played it really safe as well, because like it's coming close to Christmas, so like they're probably not going to want to put out a patch like last year they put out the 0.1, and it was essentially a bit of a dumpster fire scenario. So that being said, we should be able to play plenty of new builds. There's tons of new build variety with obviously the Druid coming in. There's a lot of combinations with all the changes they've made, especially to the uniques and all the different stuff like that. Skills are definitely, there are some skills that are way more viable than what they were previously. Some skills that are just going to be totally ridiculous, and some skills that just survive the test of time. And it's really good to see. I think if you're a melee player, you're going to eat well this league because the end game has been slowed down. So, it being slowed down to a certain degree, it's going to rely on tankier builds and stuff like that. I think we're moving away from the glass cannon stuff, and we're moving more towards that mid-range level, and I'm not negative to that at all. I think it's really good. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to this, the Twitch, and all the rest of the stuff. Over the holiday periods, I'm going to be doing more on the second channel as well. My girlfriend's going to be joining me to do content on there around Warhammer painting and other stuff. So if you want to check that out, there'll be a link in the description to the Jorgen's Forge channel. Right now it's just a lot of shorts, of painting shorts, and I haven't updated it for a little bit, but we'll be kicking that up because I did buy a $1,000 camera and I intend to use it. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you guys later, and we'll be putting out curation video will be out tomorrow. I just got to do a bit more research. I've got to readjust based on some of the things that I saw in the patch notes and have read through now. And we'll have a video out tomorrow. But anyway, I'll see you guys later and have a good one.